It began with a simple yet brilliant invention: the wheel. No one could have known that this wooden disc, first crafted more than 5,000 years ago, would set in motion the future of humankind. Born in Mesopotamia, its first purpose was humble: to shape clay on a potter's lathe. But soon it was adapted, fitted to the first animal-drawn carts, and a revolution began. For millennia, the only power available was the raw strength of beasts. Carts and carriages became extensions of sinew and muscle. In ancient Egypt, light, swift chariots pulled by horses became instruments of war and symbols of pharaonic power. In Greece and Rome, the two-wheeled biga was a testament to speed and dominance. The Roman roads, engineered with breathtaking precision, were the first arteries of a connected world, allowing wagons to travel farther and faster than ever before. Through the Middle Ages, the carriage was refined. It became the vessel of the nobility, often enclosed, richly decorated, but always tethered to the horse. In the cities, streets were narrow and mired in mud. Travel was slow, uncomfortable, and reserved for the few who could afford the privilege of not walking. For the common person, the world was only as large as their own 2 feet could carry them. Mobility was a luxury. With the Renaissance and the dawn of new technical discovery, the carriage grew more common. Engineers began to experiment with suspension systems and more durable wheels. Around the 17th century, in the great cities of Europe, the first public services for hired carriages appeared, a rudimentary ancestor of the modern taxi. The Great Rupture came with the Industrial Revolution. The idea that a machine could move without the pull of an animal began to take shape in the minds of inventors. In 1769, in France, Nicolas Joseph Cugnot constructed an enormous steam-powered tricycle. It was slow, unstable, and monstrously heavy, but it moved under its own power. It was a machine. Experiments with steam continued throughout the 1800s. Some vehicles managed to carry passengers, but they were overwhelmingly cumbersome. The boilers were too heavy, the time required to build pressure was too long, and their range was severely limited. Inventors knew there had to be an alternative. The answer arrived with the internal combustion engine. In 1870, the Austrian inventor Siegfried Marcus built a simple cart powered by gasoline. A short time later, in Germany, Karl Benz patented what is widely considered the first modern automobile in 1886. It was a 3-wheeled vehicle with an internal combustion engine, simple yet functional. It possessed all the essential components: a chassis, an engine, wheels, steering, and a seat. In the same era, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach were working on similar designs. The dream of the automobile was becoming a reality. But these first cars were rare, expensive, and profoundly unreliable. Built one by hand, they required expert craftsmen, costly materials, and immense patience. Only the wealthiest could afford them. Then came Henry Ford. In America, in 1908, he launched the Model T, a car designed to be simple, durable, and affordable. It was more than a machine. It was the final stage of a 5,000-year-long transformation. The simple wooden disc had not just conquered distance, it had redefined it. The world was no longer measured in footsteps or the endurance of a horse, but in the relentless, mechanical turning of a wheel that had finally been set free. In ancient China, a concept was born. Carts engineered with rudimentary differentials, allowing wheels to turn at different speeds through a curve. In India, Persia, and across the Middle East, the chariot was central to commerce and to war. From its inception, the wheel was adapted, refined, and reimagined by every civilization to meet the demands of its time. But with the collapse of great empires, the world shrank. During the Middle Ages, roads crumbled to dust. Travel became slow, arduous, and fraught with peril. Only the nobility moved with any speed, in carriages drawn by teams of horses, a statement of power and privilege. For the common citizen, the world was measured in footsteps, or at best, by the plodding pace of an ox-drawn cart. Transportation was a luxury. Yet, cities were growing, trade was expanding, and with them, the silent, mounting need for a more efficient way to move. Then came the Renaissance, and with it, an explosion of human ingenuity. But the true revolution would be forged not in a workshop of a lone genius, but on the factory floor. It was the assembly line. For the first time, the automobile was not built, but born in series. Each worker performed a single, precise task, a human cog in a vast, rhythmic machine. Production times were shattered, costs plummeted. Suddenly, the automobile was no longer a novelty for the wealthy. It was becoming an accessible commodity. The world began to reconfigure itself around this new machine. Roads filled with traffic, and a new ecosystem bloomed in its wake. Gasoline pumps, repair shops, and the stark geometry of road signs. In Europe, legendary names began to assert their dominance. Fiat in Italy, Peugeot and Renault in France, Mercedes in Germany. The machine itself was in constant flux. Its form, its speed, its very substance evolved. Wood gave way to metal. Hand lever brakes were replaced by the pedal. Simple engines grew into more powerful, more complex hearts of steel. The automobile was weaving itself into the fabric of daily life. During the First World War, it was conscripted for duty, ferrying troops, munitions, and the wounded from the front lines. After the war, production resumed with an unstoppable force. Through the 1920s and 30s, the automobile became the ultimate symbol of modernity, fundamentally altering how humanity lived, worked, and traveled. The post-war economic boom of the 1950s put a car in nearly every home. Models diversified to fill every niche, small, nimble vehicles for the city, and large, comfortable cruisers for the open highway. The focus shifted to comfort, speed, and aesthetics. The automobile was now a social signifier, a declaration of one's place in the world. Then, a reckoning. The 1960s and 70s ushered in the first wave of safety regulations. Seat belts, more powerful headlights, and superior brakes became standard. The car grew safer, but also more complex. And as the oil crisis sent shockwaves across the globe, a new imperative emerged: efficiency. Small, parsimonious vehicles from Japan, once dismissed, conquered the global market. From that moment, the evolution has never ceased. New engines have been imagined, new forms of power harnessed, but the core of the story remains unchanged. It is the long, fascinating, and unbroken line that connects a simple wooden cart to the profound freedom of movement we know today. It is a testament not merely to a machine, but to humanity's relentless drive to conquer distance, and in doing so, to constantly redefine the boundaries of its own world. Even in the mind of a Renaissance master, a dream was taking shape. Leonardo da Vinci sketched out designs for self-propelled carts, intricate contraptions of springs and levers. They were ideas born centuries ahead of their time, yet they were a clear premonition, a testament to the ancient, persistent dream of a machine that could move on its own. For the ages that followed, progress was measured by the hoofbeat of the horse. The evolution of the carriage was a slow, deliberate crawl. In England, a revolution of stone began to cover the roads, smoothing the paths of commerce and communication. The first postal services were established, their carriages stitching the nation together. The concept of a regular, scheduled line of transport was no longer theory, but a tangible reality. By the 18th century, the system grew more sophisticated. England introduced the first toll roads, a novel idea to finance the endless task of maintenance. Transportation was becoming an organized, predictable force. But the true leap forward would not come from stone or schedule, but from the fires of science. The year was 1765. James Watt's steam engine did not merely perfect a machine, it unleashed a new power upon the world. A question, potent and inevitable, began to form in the minds of innovators. If steam could move a pump, why not a vehicle? While this new energy simmered, the age of the carriage reached its zenith. Materials grew stronger, suspensions more forgiving, making the bone-jarring journeys of the past a distant memory. The arrangement of horses was studied with scientific precision to maximize their force. For the wealthy, the carriage became a rolling palace, its interiors adorned with fine fabrics, its windows fitted with glass, its passage lit by the gentle glow of small oil lamps. It was no longer a mere conveyance, it was a declaration of status. Kings, nobles, and ambassadors glided through cities in immense vehicles, drawn by teams of horses dressed in ceremonial splendor. For the masses, this world was an impossible fantasy. Then, the engine arrived. First, the hiss of steam, then the roar of gasoline. The first motor vehicles were strange, hybrid things. Carriages, yet eerily unburdened by the animals that had defined them for millennia. Newspapers of the era often called them by a simple, descriptive name: the horseless carriage. The public was a mixture of intrigue and deep suspicion. These machines were loud. They emitted foul odors. They terrified the animals that still ruled the streets. In some cities, they were banned outright. But the change was a force of nature, and it could not be stopped. Year by year, the machine began to find its true form. The tiller gave way to the steering wheel. Brakes became more reliable. Wheels were shod in rubber. Headlights pierced the darkness, and fenders tamed the spray of the road. An industry was being born. In Germany, France, Italy, the United Kingdom, and the United States, a flurry of patents and brands heralded a new age of innovation. The 1910s brought the thrill of competition. The first automobile races became crucibles of engineering, where the raw desire for speed pushed designers beyond all known limits. From this crucible came the first inflatable pneumatic tires, the radiator to cool the engine's fire, and transmissions with multiple gears. With the proliferation of the automobile, an entire ecosystem of new professions bloomed. Mechanics, tire specialists, and driving instructors appeared where none had existed before. Driving schools were founded to train the first generation of motorists. A new social contract had to be written from scratch. Codes for the road, license plates for identification, and permits to operate these powerful new tools. Everything we now take for granted was invented from nothing. Even the words we use carry the echoes of this long history. The word car descends from the Latin carus, a term with roots stretching back into the ancient world. Carriage, buggy, vehicle, each term is a chapter in this epic journey. The evolution from a simple wooden cart to a complex engine of metal and fire is not merely a history of how we move. It is the story of how we remade our world, forever altering the scale of our lives and the scope of our ambition. Within its very name lies the promise. Auto, the self, and mobile, the moving, to travel of its own accord. It was a machine that would unite distant cities, forge colossal industries, and ignite the imaginations of artists and engineers alike. But the most extraordinary truth is that this transformation was not the fruit of a single event. It is the culmination of a slow, grinding evolution, a saga written across centuries of dreams, of countless trials, and of obstacles relentlessly overcome. And it all began, not with an engine, but with a wheel.